For section 3-3 work together, we are going to be doing 6 different transactions using the same company and the same chart of accounts as we did for 3-1 and 3-2. So you'll notice our transactions are still there from 3-1 and 3-2, and we'll just be working our way down the journal chronologically. So on April 12th, we paid cash for rent, $650. So I know we have cash, and then we paid cash for rent. So I'm going to go to the chart of accounts, and we do have a rent expense specific account. So that is what we'll use. So come down here. First of the 4 things that we need to include in the entry, the date, and check number 4. All right, rent expense and paid cash. I like to do the special account column first. Paid cash, $650. So I'm going to credit cash for $650. And then we always debit expenses. So that isn't going to change. Rent expense, a debit of $650. And that is our transaction. The date, the source document, a debit, and a credit. On the 13th, now we received cash from sales, $2,500, T13. Received cash from sales. So we have cash and we have sales, our 2 special columns. So I'm going to get the 13th, T13, and then we have cash and we have sales. So sales can only be a credit. That's the only column we have, so $2,500 credit. And then we obviously have to debit cash because we have to have a debit and a credit. So we can't just leave the account title column blank because it might look like we forgot to put an account title there. So instead we have a check mark, and we do the same thing. In order to get the check mark, use the drop down. So that is the 13th. Nothing more to write. Check mark because we don't have an account title, so we don't have anything in the general column. Sales credit, $2,500. Cash debit, $2,500. Moving on to the 14th, we sold services on account to K-Spa, $480. So we sold services. Doesn't matter what we sell. If we sell something, services, jewelry, basketballs, if we sold, that means we have sales. So sales for $480. I'll get the date in there, the 14th. This is S1, a sales invoice. So sales, we have to get that in there. The value on that transaction is $480. There's our credit. We have the date, the source document. And now we have to put it in our debit. We sold on account, so we're eventually going to receive money from K-Spa. So eventually going to receive means accounts receivable. Let's spell it out exactly as it is in the chart of accounts. And we will debit that customer's account for $480. Accounts receivable is an asset. We're increasing the amount that they owe us, so we're going to debit their account. All 4 items are there for the journal entry. We'll move on to the 19th, paid cash for the electric bill. So the electric bill, that could be included under a lot of different things. So I'm going to look into our expenses. Well, it's not rent expense. Miscellaneous expense is used rarely. Now, our electric bill, that's going to be something that is monthly, so it wouldn't be miscellaneous. Miscellaneous would be things that don't happen very often. So we will use utilities expense for the electric bill. So on the 19th, get the 19th in there. Check 5. We paid cash. Since we wrote a check, that means we paid cash for $220. And it is for the utilities expense. We always debit our expenses, $220. So our expenses are going to look the same. Rent expense, general debit, cash credit, utilities expense. We wrote a check, general debit, cash credit. 2 more transactions. On the 20th, we received cash on account from K-Spa. So on the 14th, we sold service to them, and they were eventually going to pay us. Well, now here on the 20th, here they are paying us. So we received cash. So I know I'm going to debit cash. So we must have to credit K-Spa. So I'll get the 20th. And this is receipt for 2. And since we received cash, I'm going to debit cash for the total, $255. And then we need to credit accounts receivable K-Spa, spelled exactly as it is in the chart of accounts. We're going to credit their account for $255. Received cash, cash is an asset, increases with the debit. Accounts receivable is an asset, and we want to lower the amount that they owe. So keep track of how much they owe us. We're lowering that amount by $255. Finally, on the 21st, we paid cash to owner as a withdrawal of equity, $1,500. So this is a situation where the owner, Norma Dirks, she has been making money with her company, so she's going to give herself a paycheck, making a withdrawal of cash. So on the 21st, paid cash to the owner, check 6 for $1,500. Check 6, wrote a check, so I'm going to credit cash, $1,500. And then we have Norma Dirks drawing. She withdrew money. We always debit the drawing for $1,500. So we always make sure we have the 4 items to include in every entry: the date, the source document, the debit, and the credit. Forgetting to put the date or the source document are points that you'll be really frustrated if you miss on the test. So always go through that checklist, those 4 things included in every transaction. 3-4, we will complete this journal, and that will be the end of the chapter.